Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I'd like to read you a blog article that I made almost 6 years ago when my daughter was only 2.5 years old. That's my oldest daughter. And I was really in the mix of it all. I was in those toddler years, and I had never been away from my daughter. Every single day, even every single hour, I'm pretty sure, I had been with my daughter until she was 2.5. And that is not what I recommend, by the way. And yet that's what I felt like we needed at that time. But what it did is it got me to this space where I really needed to have time for me to figure out who I was and to feel responsible for me and me only. And I've actually done many things like this since this time of the podcast that I'm reading, and I highly recommend it. So this is for the mums who are still in the mix of it, and I hope it helps you see that you're not alone in some of the concerns that you have and the feelings more so that you have around each day, around some of the resentment or the confusion and the how could I possibly want to be away from my kids so much and yet also not want to be away from my kid all at the same time. Those are very confusing thoughts and emotions. And it's also for the moms who have been through the stage of toddlerhood and are beyond it now. And I talk to you a little bit more after reading this blog post. It is on Medium if you fancy the written version, though you can read the transcript of this as well. But it is called Why I Left My Toddler with Her Dad for a Week, and Perhaps You Should Too. So a super controversial title, but it actually has, like, at least for me, a lot of hits on there. 409 claps. I'm like, oh, that's pretty awesome. And I think that was probably one of the first blog posts I ever wrote, humorously. So here it is. Bear in mind that my kids are now 8 and 5. So this is me a few years back speaking in that voice. Why I left my toddler with her dad for a week, and perhaps you should too. Recently, I took the plunge, packed my bags, hopped on a plane, and left my 2.5-year-old daughter at home with her dad for a week while I went to an adult summer camp, and that promised to help me live a good life. I had never even left her overnight. This was big. There's lots of reflecting and learnings to share, but today I focus on why I packed my bags and why I think that every parent needs to find their own way to get away too. So why did I do it? The short answer is because I needed to know that I could. I am a free spirit, seeking new experiences and challenges, always looking to take the unmarked path on a trail just to see where it goes. I realized that I felt stuck in parenthood and that it wasn't making any of us happy. I was frustrated. My relationship with my husband was stretched as I inadvertently blamed him for my stuckness, and I was counting the minutes to nap time each day so I'd get time to myself. I like to think my daughter didn't notice, but she probably did. Motherhood is a feckload of contradicting emotions. I want time to myself, but never want to leave my daughter's side. I love being a mom and miss knowing who else I am. I both love my life and feel stuck. This likely won't change anytime soon, so I figured it was time to try something different. The moment I walked through security in the airport, after hugging my daughter and husband goodbye, I wasn't overwhelmed with sadness, but it was fear. I watched as my thoughts went from, will they be okay? To, but who am I without them? And it was then, as that fear trembled through my body, that I knew I had made the right decision. I needed space to rediscover who I am. Only a small ask from a week away, but it delivered. Being a parent is both so incredibly amazing and so incredibly difficult. We get so little time to ourselves, especially in those first few years, that it's easy to lose ourselves. When was the last time you got to shower in peace or sat down and read a book without falling asleep one page in because you're so exhausted now that the little ones are finally asleep? Without the time for these small luxuries, we certainly aren't going to find the time or energy for reflection, mindfulness, journaling, yoga, taking a class, whatever it is that will help us grow as a person. Here's the thing though, without the space for growth, we suffer, and so do those around us. For me, I knew the quickest way to remembering who I am was to stick myself in the middle of an incredibly loving community where I could experiment with being anybody I felt like in the moment, and they would fully support me. Camp Good Life Project gave me that space and constantly challenged me to reflect, think, explore, and learn about myself. I went with a see what happens attitude and chose workshops which were lighthearted and exploratory, like art, yoga, meditation, and wonder, instead of the more work-focused ones that an earlier me might have chosen. I was encouraged to constantly think, what if? Which led to things like singing in the talent show, through to choosing naps over schedules. Did I figure out who I am? Surprisingly, I did, or I remembered at least. I attended a workshop on wonder, where we were encouraged to think of a time in childhood when we felt a pure sense of wonder, to write down 3 words describing that child, and then to be that child for 2 minutes. How freeing it was. My words were curious, playful, and rebellious. It was then that I realized, or more remembered, that this is me and all I need to be. I am those 3 words: curious, playful, and rebellious. I can now lead my life asking myself, what if I was curious, playful, and rebellious in this moment? And then going out and doing it. The great thing is that those 3 words are who I want to be, both as a parent and in the rest of my life. They are the same. Ping! So, do you need to run away for a week to pay for a camp or hop on an airplane? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, as a parent, you do need to create space for yourself to be, to grow, and to develop. Would I have gotten the same realization through a different type of escape? Maybe. We are so lucky to have these little ones and the opportunity for growth that they present us with. But the growing part won't happen, at least not peacefully, without giving it and yourselves space. So, how do you give yourself space each day, each week, each month, each year? What are your small ways to reclaim that space? Or your big dreams of space? And what's stopping you? What will happen if you do it? And at the end of the day, I thought to myself, nobody will die if I go away for a week. And actually, it's a gift to my daughter to get to know her dad better, and for him too. Whether it's a loving partner, a friend, or another family member, who can you ask to help in order to give you the space you need to grow? So that was me about 6 years ago. And what a difference time has made. And I'll let you in on a little secret that I didn't share with the world at that time. When I went to that camp, I was actually pregnant with my second child in super early days. Nobody else would have known unless I told them. And when I booked that camp, it was before I knew. And I'm almost was like, no, I'm so exhausted, I can't go and do it. But you know what? I am so, so glad that I did, because that was the time, that was the moment that I got to give myself, right? I got to experience what it was like to be me and only responsible for me for a short period of time. And it's really interesting to read this back this many years later to you, because I believe all of those things still. And the way that I describe things in that blog that I just read you is different than I am now. So do know that life changes, right? So if you are a parent who is still currently in those toddler years, know that things shift if you take the time to help them. And actually, they're going to shift no matter what. But it'll be a lot more peaceful if you take the time to have time to yourself. And no, you don't need to go off to New York to a week away camp, although I love summer camp and I highly recommend doing anything of the sort. But even an hour, can you get an hour that is time for you that doesn't necessarily involve you going to a grocery store or doing something that's another responsibility of yours, but instead time for you to just be you and reflect and journal and think and surround yourself with other people? For goodness sake, community is where it's at, right? I could have gone to just by myself into the woods, I suppose, for a week, and I would have gotten something from that. But it's in surrounding myself with other people and putting myself in a situation where it was scary. Like, not only did I not know who I was at that point, that's how I felt, but I was entering a space where I didn't know a single other person. And I'm pretty introverted. While you might not believe that, I'm talking on a podcast, I'm also talking to myself in a room right now, right? And it's exhausting to me to go and meet that many new people all in the same space at the same time. But it was exactly what I needed, was to stretch my comfort zone again in a different way than my kid stretched my comfort zone. So that was my life in toddlerhood. And since I've had another child, so about, 6-7 months after that, I had another child and my life completely changed again, right? And I actually wrote another article that I'm not even sure if I ever posted, but it was a follow-on from this one, which was something to the extent of why you might not want to leave your kid for a week. And I could list so many reasons. And some of them are super practical. Like, you can't go away for a week so before my daughter was 2.5, in order to go away, I decided to stop nursing my daughter. I decided it was time. It wasn't because I was going away, but it was time. And I was pregnant with another child. And that was like excruciating if you've ever experienced that before while you're pregnant. And we finished that so that I could go away for a week. And now I look back and I'm like, I could have started that up again when I came back, but it actually just set the scene there. But before that, I wasn't ready to give that up. My daughter would not take a bottle. No, you don't have to nurse if that's what you do until they're 2.5. But that was the relationship we had. And that was how she got comfort and nutrition and everything else. So that's one of the reasons you might choose not to go away for a week. And that's okay. That's okay. But can you go away for a day or a night? And I'd like to point out what it gave to my husband, like my daughter's father. He had to figure out how to father in a more intense way, right? So he was the typical, at that time, to the typical, 9 to 7 worker, to be honest. And I didn't even know when he was coming home sometimes. So I was very much the caregiver before this and after that, to be honest. So this gave him an opportunity to really experience what parenting is when he's there making his decisions the way he wants to do it. And it also helped me to know that he was learning what that was like, right? That little sense of resentment that I felt at the time, so much shame around having for him, not understanding how exhausting it is to do so much and yet so little all at the same time. So This episode is for those of you who are still in the crux of those younger years when you simply have a really hard time to make space for yourself. And while we need to do that daily, it's also important to take an in-depth time for yourself. And don't overplan it. Give yourself space to explore who you are. Again, reconnect with that person. And for those of you who, like me, are a little bit further on than this now, I hope this reflection gave you a kind of grace and gratefulness for what life has turned into now. It's still hard. It's still hard to parent an 8 and 5-year-old, which is what my kids are now. And yet I have that little bit of space to start exploring me again. And a lot of the people I work with are in this space, right? So what do you do with that space, right? So for you listening who are no longer in the toddler years, but a little bit further on, and you feel the same sense of who the heck am I now, because you have space. And perhaps you forgot to give it to yourself or really had a lot of things getting in the way during the crux of it all, of the toddler years. Now you have the space, so now what? And that's a lot of the work we're going to be doing on this podcast, in helping you figure out who you are again, this new version of yourself combined with an old one, and what your purpose is and what impact you want to make in the world. So thank you for listening and tapping into the old me combined with the new me, and we'll speak to you soon. That is it, folks. This has been Mel Finlater on Permission to Be Human, the podcast, and I am so glad that you have joined us here today and hope that you have taken away some tidbits that will help you go away, connect with your big, audacious dream, and make that massive impact in the world that you are dying to make. If you liked today's episode, please, please, please like it, share it. Think of one person that you think would also like it and send it on over to them. Let's get this out there and more moms feeling like themselves, inspired, dreaming big, and out there being them. Please do head on over to find me on Facebook with Permission to Be Human, or Instagram, or you can even pop me an email and say hello at permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com. Say hello and let me know that you listened. What did you like about it? I would love to hear. If you didn't like it, I don't really want to know. Just kidding. You can share that if you want. I would love to know, however, who you are. Let's connect. Let's find out what you want more of. Yes, this is a newer podcast, so I want to hear from you, and I want to make it what would be useful to you. As always, remember that you have permission to dream big, permission to feel big, and permission to be you. You have complete and full permission to be human. For real, you do.